you were to explain the GAA to non-initiated, how would you go about doing it, do you think? Can you succinctly explain what the GAA is?
Well, that's a good question. I think what the GAA represents for me, it's kind of deeply rooted in Ireland, Ireland's national sport, tied to every community in the country. I guess it's essentially a pillar of Irish life, both sporting and social. Something that kind of Irish people are very proud of, very passionate about. Huge participation numbers, and this isn't succinct anymore. I know it's getting into something longer.
The captains of Down on the right and Kerry watched the fall of the coin. Down won and chose to play from right to left. The teams were at Wembley, giving London a taste of Gaelic football. All the aggression of soccer, rugger and prize fighting, but what the rules are, you'd have to ask an Irishman.
You'd probably think, you know, how could it work? And sometimes when I go home, people say to me that, you know, there would be no community in London. And to me, I guess, being so familiar now with the GAA clubs and the GAA geography of the city, you know, I'd always dispute that and say that there is like that kind of rural, parochial GAA community in London. It's spread out across the city, but yet the lines that connect the clubs and the people within those clubs are very tight. Even though they're dispersed within the millions of people in the city, there still is this rich, very close-knit GAA scene, GAA community. I came in 2008. I was here working for the Irish Post, covering both news and sport, and you know, spent an awful lot of weekends down in Ruislip covering GAA games, triple headers, senior, intermediate, junior matches. You know, you could be doing 3 matches in a day down there, and I think through that experience I started to really enjoy the dynamic of London GAA, I guess, and how this parochial context that I was so familiar with from back home was like laid out over one of the world's biggest cities, and all the how that the context of GAA was changed. You know, the optics were changed by London. The owner of this pub, Packy Hughes, he put in huge work with St Brendan's down through the years in London, and Packy Hughes used to leave this pub here, the kitchen in behind me. He used to be cooking up a stew and dinner. He used to put a pot of stew in the car, drive it through King's Cross, all the way out to Greenford in the evening, like, you know, feed the boys. And To me, essentially, that's where you can walk through a pub door in London and there will be some GAA story behind it. That feeds into the texture of a GAA community anywhere.
It's worth taking that photograph. Absolutely brilliant.
So what exactly was that happened there?
When he became president of the GAA in Ireland, it was over here. He was elected. Of course, he's a Galway man, and we carried him down South Harrow, carried him down the street, and into the pub. It was a fantastic evening. Did you ever see that one? Cassie's Clay with the Hurley. 1978, our treasurer had an argument with another player, and in one afternoon of a Saturday, he arrived in my little flat I had in Alberton with all his books left outside my door. He resigned as treasurer. So I finished up as chairman, secretary, treasurer and manager that year, and we won the 5. We won the senior, intermediate and junior championship, you know, and that was just...
You were everything but the physio?
Yeah, everything was a club, you know.
So you said you came over in 61?
I came over in 1961. Basically, why we came over, you came from a big family of 10, you know, 6 sisters, 4 brothers, and there was no work in Ireland in 61. So you worked maybe as a shop assistant or some kind of a job like that. But of course, once you got to the 18 years of age, you know, all your brothers was leaving, all your sisters, the older than you, were there before you. So then you hit for the boat, like everybody did. And you arrived in Euston and you had very little money, but you stayed with your older sister, and then you worked your way. And because you were a hurler, and where you know, I had played minor, won a county minor championship with Galway in 1960. Then I was on the Galway team in 61 and played in the league with Joe Salmon midfield. And the clubs heard about you, which was a big asset to be a good hurler.
There was fierce competition when new players came into town, and obviously this was a time pre-internet, pre-mobile phones, like the kind of modern communications we have now. Yet there's many stories of Irish people working in Heathrow Airport and Gatwick and spotting guys coming through departures and tipping off people in various clubs in London.
London was there was 12 senior hurling clubs in London in the 60s. There was probably 18 intermediate teams, you know, and it was very strong. So you met your friends here and you got in and they got you a job. And I remember the first shuttering job I got. It was above in Mill Hill, we're doing bridges. And the late Pete Grehan, our chairman, was the foreman. And he said, if anyone comes along and asks you, are you long on this game? And all I had is a saw and a hammer. Oh, I had all my life, you know.
In recent years, Kingdom Kerry Gaels is a club that have done kind of great work in that area. A publican, the late Christy Cassani, at a pub, the Kingdom on the Kilburn High Road. Christy is reputed to have helped like hundreds, you know, possibly even more. There was always a knowledge of players coming over, and people knew to go to this club to get help. They knew to go to people like Christy Cassan, Danny Sullivan, who owns the building contractors, and these are people who would help new emigrants and new players get settled in London.
Last year we won with Tyrconnell Gaels and I was training the team, so that was also very special because I had a hip operation last year and I couldn't play anymore. And at 30 years of age, when a surgeon tells you you can't play anymore, it's difficult personal moment, so to deal with that. Yeah. Oh geez, sorry.
Yeah, no, take it.
It's one of my players now.
Yeah, go ahead.
No. I do need to talk to him sternly.
Okay.
It's not for a camera. Well, I'm here about 5 years now, coming up in November, and I was working for bookmakers, Celtic bookmakers back home. When the recession hit, the bookies went belly up, so I lost my job then, and I was just working part-time in a bookmaking shop for a couple of months, and then I just decided to come to London. And I had spoken to a couple of GA clubs, and the manager of the club picked me up when I came over, and had a place for me to stay and a job for me. And that was on a Thursday. I remember it was on a Thursday, and the manager of the London team rang me on the Friday, and then I started training with London. I played in a practice match for London on the Saturday. So I was delighted, couldn't be happier.
Things haven't really changed that much then, because you could hear that story back in the 50s or 40s.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an age-old thing, and I went to Boston 10 years ago now, and it was the same story. They put us up for the summer and got us some work and sorted us out with everything that you could need. Something that's intrinsically Irish to play Gaelic games, and it does give us all an enormous sense of pride that we are involved and that we are, successful, and it does mean so much.
I was talking to your gaffer during the week.
Was he any any intimate details? Or I came to London in September 2013 and played for Tyrconnell Gaels for the last 2.5 years. A lot of guys from my club back home had played for them in the past. One current fella was playing for my club at home at the time, and also their secretary was a White Cross man and a brother of the White Cross senior manager. So it just I was always going to go to that club, It makes you feel less homesick in a way, it gives you a sort of reminder of Irish life, as it were, and you don't feel London's a very big city, and if you're over here on your own, it can be quite difficult. Now, I found in my first year I was quite, not massively homesick, but the football definitely helped, and you're meeting, regular people that you became friends with and were having a bit of crack with on a Tuesday and a Thursday and a Saturday, Sunday playing football. So it certainly helped you adjust to London and get up on your feet.
I guess there's a thing of comfort, and there always has been that thing of comfort, especially if you're coming on your own and you're new, and you have a GAA background, that you can go to a club where it has some kind of affiliation with where you're from, on top of it being a GAA club, and you have that immediate kind of identification. You have access to people who are doing the same thing as you. They're from the same country as you, and in the case of those clubs, they're from the same county or even the same parish, and that's been an enormous comfort for people who've emigrated and come to live here down through the years.
When you go abroad and you see so many different cultures and people from all over the world, and then you can see the O'Neill's GAA bag and the jerseys going around the place, they stand out like a sore thumb, and you can spot them all over the city, and it's great. It's I suppose you have a certain sense of camaraderie with all those people straight away without ever knowing them or talking to them. You know that they're Irish and that they play GAA and that we're all part of the same circle, and we all have gone through the same things, and that we all are currently going through the same kind of stuff. Because obviously leaving home is difficult for all of us for a variety of different reasons, and it's not nice to leave your family and people that you've known all your life behind.
I think it is probably this social aspect, not as much social, but socially sort of mean going out and a lash with different people, but I don't think it's that. I think it's more meeting guys from similar backgrounds who have moved over, guys who you have stuff in common with, and just building up a bit of a rapport with them,
An 18-year-old emigrant can go into a pub on a Sunday and sit with a much older man who emigrated many years before, but they're connected through their interest in this sport, and there is that kind of instant social connection and just the shared experience of being away.
Every Sunday you'll get, where are you from, where are you coming from? I come from Barnet, husband and wife, they come from Barnet here every Sunday because they think this is the nearest thing they'll ever get to Croke Park, the old boys. And they'll come, and I set up the cinema there, and I know that Larry from Wexford will be there, and Tommy from Kilkenny will be there. They have all their seats for the Sunday.
I think the 60s and the 70s, I think definitely just by virtue of the fact if you're taking the number of clubs as a barometer, we're probably looking at half the clubs in the city now, somewhere around 30, as there were in the 1960s or even earlier in the 50s. where there was upwards of 60 clubs.
The sun don't shine in my backyard anymore.
Irish, there was Irish everywhere. Alberton was full of Irish, Ealing was full of Irish. You know, we ran the whole show in London. We done all the buildings, we done all the bridges, we done all the motorways, you know, and it was unbelievable, fantastic.
Their experience of emigration as a unit was tighter. They stuck together more. They were working in kind of similar industries more and socialised together in a way that London really doesn't kind of see now. And I think that kind of, because it was so cohesive, the clubs were tighter as a result.
When I took over St. Gabriel's in 1972, I was established in as a contractor, a small contractor, you know, employing men. And on one job I had 13 carpenters on the job, and they were all playing hurling for Gabriel's. You'd have a great lifestyle there, you know, out at night and great crack. I was a terror, absolute terror for the women, I have to admit that.
There's been a natural erosion, I guess, over the years of people can't play forever. So that generation that came over from the 50s, they weren't replaced in the numbers that they originally came over in.
There's been a massive change from the 60s to now in London. There's no such thing as a labourer coming from Ireland now. I met 5 young guys here on Saturday night, just over, and they were doing engineering, or quantities, QS. You know, QS is a great job here.
I moved over to try and sort of further my career, so as well, like a lot of construction work happening, so, and that's the line of work I'm in, so positive in that regard.
What was the main challenge that playing Gaelic over here raised for you?
It's probably the commute and stuff, like, and fitting it in around work, because I suppose over here you're up at like 6 o'clock in the morning, and then I would just go straight to training or whatever. So sometimes you are tempted after a long day at work to just go, frig it, I'm going home, like, you know, I'm not going to training.
A training session is at 7 o'clock in the evening, and the manager wants you there, and a lot of these lads are working in Canary Wharf, and they have to travel by tube and train, and you know, it's very, very difficult to get training.
And it's only when you live in London and you spend a period of time here that you understand the logistics of the whole thing, and why it is such a big commitment, and why it is so difficult.
You're talking about mass emigration out of Ireland in the 1950s on a scale that probably hasn't been seen since. England was, you know, probably the destination of choice at that time for people when they were leaving. I guess now we're in a situation where people have more choices, they have better education, they have more options. So
I'd say the favourite thing about London for me is my work, in that you're exposed to a lot of major projects.
That's what's keeping you here?
Yeah, it probably is, yeah. Career. And if I'm being honest, I've decided, you know, to stay in London for another year and reassess how things are going.
Things are picking up again in Ireland now, so there's more guys going home and less guys coming over, which obviously leaves everyone a little bit stuck. We lost 5 or 6 this year, and you know, that would be probably replicated throughout every club in London. You know, they would lose 5 or 6 every year. So then, if you only get 3 over, you're down 2 or 3 players from last year straight away. And then if that happens 2 or 3 years in a row, you're in trouble. So it's basic mathematics.
sometimes with the transience of people coming over now, that kind of passion and that connection with the club, you know, it doesn't always get time to bed in.
So that's why it places an even greater emphasis then on the youth structures within the clubs to develop players that are born here and grew up here and produce better players, which I suppose comes back into part of my day job. And it's great for me and the people involved in youth development to see all the young homegrown players that are breaking through now into the adult teams. And it's fantastic to see, and it's the way it should be. You know, it creates a sustainable pool of players for all the clubs, so that regardless of who arrives here from home, that there will be GAA clubs here year in, year out.
I think the appetite for Irish people coming over is still there. They still want to play the game.
Like me playing football, besides the total enjoyment of it, it's like the first thing I talk about with my parents, with principally my dad. Like, it's the first thing he mentions that, did you match the weekend? Did you have training last night? Have you training tomorrow night or whatever? So it's kind of like I keep going, almost like, because it's kind of like part of me, if that makes sense,
To be Irish abroad is a very different thing to being Irish at home. So we have a very distinct community and a wonderful group of people.
Are you gonna think you'll ever move back to Ireland?
No.
No. This is it.
No, it's because I'm part of London.
It does take more, I think, in some sense, to keep a club going here. And I think anybody who commits themselves to a club in that way and kind of gives of their time in that way and makes that extra effort, that has to be commended. It's that type of experience and that type of endeavour that really makes me care, I guess, about London GAA as a journalist and someone who lived here. And I think, that this system this structure has created these themes, these stories against the backdrop of this international city is, I think it's quite capturing.